So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cecilia Velez. I am the Health Outreach Coordinator and Passaic River Ambassador with the Urban Waters Federal Partnership. I want to welcome you all today to the third day of our conference. And not just welcome you to the conference, but also to a very special session that's very dear to the hearts of everyone that's involved here today. But before kicking things off officially, I wanted to first just share with you a couple of reminders. The usual Zoom reminders that you probably would have heard now that we've moved our conference to Hoover. So if you have any questions for our panelists today as part of our session, we are encouraging you to add them to the Q&A tab, which will be found on the right side of your window. We encourage you to use that Q&A tab throughout the whole point of our session. If you have a question for our panelists, be sure to put it there. If you'd like to share any resources or if you'd like to share any comments, please be sure to use the chat feature, which will also be found on the right side of your screen. We're saving that for any links that you'd like to share or any comments that you'd like to make. After our session wraps up, we encourage you to go to the community tab on our community board. There is going to be a page dedicated to our session. It's going to be titled the same title of our session today. And if you have any questions that you're curious about, even after this conversation is over, please be sure to use that community tab to keep the conversation going. We'd love to continue hearing from you. And we want to make sure that you are using Hoover to keep the conversation going throughout the rest of the week. So please be sure to do that. So with that being said, again, I'm really happy to be able to host this session with you all and to have all the panelists involved that will be joining us here today. So with that being said, I'm very happy to introduce you to our moderator today, Dr. Jerel Ezell. Dr. Ezell is an environmental health disparities researcher and an assistant professor in Africana Studies at Cornell University. He is a current Fulbright Scholar and serves as the director of the new Cornell Center for Cultural Humility. His most recent research focuses on the Flint water crisis, examining residents' health outcomes in the context of their socioeconomic position and their beliefs and behaviors, and before and following the event. Dr. Ezell, we are so happy that you are joining us here today and that you will be our moderator for this session. I will let you go ahead and introduce the panelists, but again, to our participants, to our audience, thank you for being here today and thank you for joining us for this session. And we look forward to hearing your input on the community boards, tabs, and the Q&A feature as part of our Hoover platform. So with that, Jerel, whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Great, thanks Liz, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited to moderate this great panel. Welcome. So let me share my screen and then we will do some introductions. What we wanted to do to get started was just sort of set the table a little bit and establish some general sort of parameters and expectations around what we're trying to do today. So first, the main thing is we're here to dialogue about what mentorship means. And one thing I've been taught over the years is that there's a difference between a discussion and a dialogue. So dialogue is supposed to be more engaged, more purposeful, as opposed to discussion where you're sort of just talking at people. So we're trying to have more of a dialogue here today. And we're doing it with this very specific focus on these partnerships that we have in the estuary and the work that they're doing in relation to youth and young professionals and getting them engaged in environmental and marine sciences. The second thing that we're looking to do is just share stories, just cover different narratives, talk about successes, failures, and things in between. So we know sometimes things aren't always so black and white when it comes to these different sort of engagements. The last thing that we want to do, and this is in keeping with our idea of being applied, practical, and having some translational sort of best practices emerge, is to talk in ways that are going to be applicable to what people are doing on the ground right now. So we're looking at this from two perspectives. One is a recruitment. So how do we actually go out and recruit? How do we do that successfully? How do we get that level of engagement? And the second piece that's really important is thinking about retention, because recruitment is not so valuable if you can't actually keep people happy and maintained and sustained in those roles. So those are the three things that we're trying to do today. So as all of you know, or many of you probably know, our waterways are facing pretty grave and almost existential risks that are associated with different sort of impacts to biodiversity, public trust, people just having faith in being able to swim in the water, consume the water, drink the water, across the board. And then we have these broader issues related to public health, which really is sort of my inroad in terms of the research I've been doing at Flint. So we know that climate change is going to have some pretty profound impacts when it comes to things we're already dealing with in relation to water security, so the precipitation, flooding, sewage runoff, across the board again, and also things like heat waves. All these emergent climate change related things are coming. So the questions are, how are we going to deal with them? So there's two particular ways that I'm hoping today we can sort of frame our approaches. So one is going to be the downstream approach, which is addressing things that we really can't change. So this is in relation to building capacity and resiliency. So basically to fight back to what's already there. The second approach, and this is going to be in relation to our work with youth and young professionals, is how do we invest in environmental education, and how do we invest in training and citizen science, and do so in a way where we're, again, recruiting successfully, but also able to retain people in the long run. So how are we sustaining this engagement over time? So with this in mind, truly youth and young professionals are really critical to us getting upstream of a lot of the issues that we're going to have in this region. This is the future. These are the future generations who are going to have to lead these efforts. And we also know, even though sometimes there's sort of marginal differences, that younger people tend to have more thoughtful and affirmative thoughts when it comes to climate, science, and also just adopting behaviors that are going to be more conducive to sustainability. And we should also note, and as we have our panelists speak here in a bit, we're going to discuss what does it actually mean to be young or to be youth. Typically, we're thinking sort of the Gen Z population, the millennials, but this could potentially cover a wider spectrum. So people may certainly have some thoughts on that. So before I hand this over to the panelists, I just wanted to present a few different graphics here. So the first is from the Washington Post, and just sort of capture some general sentiments about how youth feel when it comes to climate change. Looking at teens, the percentage who are afraid of climate change is 57%. The ones who feel motivated, which is important for our purposes, is at 54%. And then again, I alluded just a second ago that some of these differences between so-called younger people and older people aren't that different, but they're broad enough that there's some promise for us really tackling these issues with climate change in a more purposeful way. So I believe we're going to have these slides available after this if people want to dive into some of these figures a little bit more. But in the interest of time, just want to give you some broad strokes about where we're at in present day. So this brings us to a very practical point, which is, you can have the beliefs and the attitudes that correspond to wanting to protect and preserve our waterways, but are you actually going out and doing things to facilitate those actions or helping these things manifest? So one thing we're going to discuss today, we're going to, again, try to be very affirmative and positive, but we also recognize there's a lot of challenges and barriers that are associated with recruiting these populations, particularly, again, the younger groups of people. And we know when we add on this more intersectional layer, when we start talking about race and ethnicity, even gender, that it can get even more complicated. And one of the primary reasons for this is because there's quite a bit of discrimination and prejudice when it comes to hiring people who come from these more minoritized or marginalized groups. And then we also know when they're in these positions, then marginalization also tends to continue on and also be pretty pronounced. So these factors are sort of a confluence and really have created the atmosphere that we have right now to even need a panel that is discussing the sort of issues that we're going to be discussing today. So we have two calls to action today. The first is really just asking you all to consider which specific populations of younger people are needed for this battle that we're currently in and that is going to intensify in the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So what we would like you to do is think about what makes it difficult for you. So this is going to require a little bit of introspection. What it makes it difficult for you to engage and retain them. Again, we're coming at this from two perspectives. And the other is to sort of be more empathetic maybe and look at it from the perspective of that young person. What is making it difficult for them to engage you? And then the last thing that we're going to ask you to do, and this is more to Liz's point with all the great touch points that we're having for this conference, is after hearing the experiences, the stories, and the ideas from our panelists today, to engage with us, to engage with one another, and to really work on concrete, substantive plans for engaging some of these populations in research and in practice and possibly even in policy. So this is happening also at two levels. So one is building and deepening representation if it's not there currently, and then also working to support organizations like this one who are trying to incorporate these groups in, again, purposeful ways into programming and policy. So with that in mind, I'm going to shift gears over to our panelists and do some introductions. So for each person, I'm going to have them discuss their role, what inspired them to get into this kind of work and to join this program. And then we're going to talk specifically about mentorship and how that informs what they're doing as a part of their projects. So the first up will be Shanara Sunderlal, who's with Billion Oyster Project, then David Tulloch at Rutgers University, then Allison Fitzgerald at New Jersey City University, Shaquille Faran at the City of New York's Office of Sustainability, then Jasmine Benitez with Rocking the Boat. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and then turn it over to Shinara.
Thanks, Jerel. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Shanara Sunderlal. I am the Environmental Education Coordinator at the Billion Oyster Project. I use she, her pronouns. The Billion Oyster Project, if you don't know, is a small NGO based out of the New York City metro area. And we're looking to restore the New York City harbor with 1 billion oysters and engage 1 million people with it. So that's kind of where I come in. And essentially, there's a lot of reasons I feel like we're here. And mentorship is a very big one for me because I recognize that I had a privileged background of being able to access this field. I grew up in India, but I had parents that were able to back me and support me in the decisions and my interest in the environmental science and education field. But I know it's not the same for my peers and everybody around me. And I want to be able to be a resource and also just speak up and see how we can make things different. And I think this field definitely is so experiential that you have to be in it and experience it and get the job on the go, that you learn so much that mentorship in this field is something that I'm really glad that we're talking about and are coming up with tangible ways for us to involve youth that can sometimes be personally intimidating for me. Like, they're such cool people. I have so much to learn from them, but what are they going to learn from me? Getting over that personal barrier, but also looking for ways for them to make a career out of being an environmental educator or being in the science field. That's all from me.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Shinara. David.
Hi everyone, I'm David Tulloch, and by day I'm a professor of landscape architecture at Rutgers in New Brunswick. My role here is that I teach GIS at the Center for Remote Sensing and Spatial Analysis, and as part of the outreach of that and the work we do with environmental planning, became connected with Future City Inc. in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I served as a board member with Future City, and for probably about 15 years have volunteered on a variety of their projects, and currently also serve on the board of the Lower Raritan Watershed Partnership here in Central New Jersey. So lots of roles, and they all interconnect in complicated ways. And part of what inspired me to be part of this panel and try to share these stories is honestly because I'm still looking for what works. I mean, we've had successes, but I can't tell you why. I'll certainly try, but it's youth work is hard, and we're always learning, and they're always changing, and so that also going to that role that then I play, I put my hat back on and act sometimes like a professor with them as a mentor for those who are thinking about whether it's a college path or who are suddenly discovering this thing called grad school and aspiring in a new way with that. My mentorship role can often involve those, but it can go back to very basic things, and really just talk about modeling basic behaviors about their environments too.
Great, thank you, David. Appreciate that. Allison.
Hi everyone, I'm Allison Fitzgerald, and by day I work as an assistant professor at New Jersey City University. It's a small MSI school in North Jersey, in Jersey City. And prior to working there, and still, I'm the Oyster program coordinator for New York through the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, which is an NGO. And so mentorship for me is really about connecting my two loves, teaching and citizen science, by kind of highlighting the role of citizen science and the role of research to these students. I get students from my school, but also students who come through New York, New Jersey Baykeeper that are undergraduates, high school students, grad students at a variety of different schools, either in the New York City area or who live in the New York City area. Mentorship to me is teaching and advising. It's showing students what could be possible, what you could do, opening their eyes to new opportunities, not forcing them into a path. My path was one way, but that doesn't mean that's your path. Just kind of highlighting opportunities for them. So I really, take pride when they come to me and they say, hey, I got this grant, or I got into grad school, or I got a job, because I know that it was their path and I just kind of help them discover it. I've been working in the Hudson River Estuary for almost 15 years now. And through a large network of connections, which I love meeting new people, connecting with new groups, I'm able to kind of highlight these different NGOs, these different organizations for my students, find a place for them to experience the outdoors, experience marine science, and then take that and apply it to whatever their goals are, whether they want to go to grad school for marine science or they want to go to medical school. It's still experience with research and in the field that they can take with them.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison. And Shaquille up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shaquille Faran, and I am the program assistant for Newark's Office of Sustainability. And just to talk about a little bit about what inspired me to be here today. So I recently graduated from college this year, and I just wanted to be here, one, because it's a great opportunity, and two, just to talk about my journey and what that is, being a recent graduate, engaging in the environmental/sustainability field, and what does that look like for me, and how that may reflect on others. And then to talk about mentorship. So mentorship is a key part of what I'm currently engaged in, because I'm working with Newark youth who have an interest in the environmental field. And I think more now than ever, that's something that's a key area of focus. And the youth are very eager and ready to get engaged and do the work, and they just need the tools and platform to do so. So I also want to share a little bit about that. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Shaquille. And last but not least, Jasmine, who's got some guests for us.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Jasmine Benitez. Hi, everyone. I am the student program director, environmental student program director here at Rocking the Boat. So if you don't know what Rocking the Boat is, in a nutshell, we are a youth development program working with high schoolers. So you may see some of my lovely high schoolers on that screen. I'll give the mic to you guys in just a sec. In Rocking the Boat, we have 3 different tracks, but our main center is youth development. So students can enter our program and join an environmental science track. They can also even join a boat building and a sailing track. Those boat building students actually build the boat, so we utilize to perform a lot of the environmental work that we do right here on the Bronx River. So what has inspired me to be here, and what does mentorship mean to me? To me, it is everything. It is every part of my work. I am here, and I chose kind of this field because of my experience as a teen and just how great it was and how impactful the mentors I had in my life were. So I just definitely jumped at the chance to be able to fulfill that role for others. And so I'm here mostly because it is just the platform, the environmental work that I do. I love it. I can geek out about water quality all day, but I'm here for these guys. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to the now apprentices in the program who are my former students.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Ethan.
Oh, my name is Raven. I'm also an apprentice. Let me see the question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What inspired?
What
Well,
inspires you to be here?
in the program?
Ethan.
What inspired me to come here?
To be into the program.
Was to be into the program. I like being I'm like an active person because after school I normally have a lot of energy, and for me to waste it when I get home, just chilling there on my bed, I can't do that. So I come here, burn all my energy, then go take a nap at home.
What about the environment?
The environment is pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. I also have a lot of energy to use up after school, and I'm also very inspired by just the environment in general. I like being in nature, and I like being around, just like the outside world, because I feel like there's so much that we have yet to learn about, especially people like us. We should learn about our environment and actually what is around us.
And what goes on
and what goes on.
in general.
Great, guys.
Thank you guys. And would you just tell the group, when did you start? When did you start the program, just to age yourself?
I started when I was 14 in the spring of 2019.
Yeah. I started when I was 15 in March of 2020. Yeah.
So what is your favorite project that we work on here as apprentices, if you had to pick one?
Probably microplastics. We look for microplastics in the Bronx River, and I really like finding them, and what's it called?
We look under them with a microscope
To identify?
Yeah, identifying microplastics is very, very fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can tell them all about the fun microplastic stuff. Thank you guys for being here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Millenhausen. That's cool. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, yep, Chris, you can go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself quickly. My name is Chris Millenhausen. I'm the Environmental Job Skills Program Director here. So I run the apprenticeship program, and I'm really inspired by the topic of this conference. I think when it comes to mentorship, I think that myself as a mentor, I like kind of exposing young people to different people in this field as possibility models, right? So as things that maybe they can do in the future if they decide to stay in this field. And even if they don't, I think it's super important to expose young people to this, because I think that, as they grow up in the world that we're in and in the climate we're in with climate change, it's going to kind of be by default that everybody's going to know about this. And I think that lots of other industries are going to merge, and it's going to be important for their futures and in general and their careers. So yeah, and just one more thing I wanted to say about mentorship. So Jasmine and I feel like we are mentors here, but one thing that's awesome about our programs here is that the apprentices, once they get into my program, they become mentors for the students. So the 11th and 12th graders, we do this thing often. We collaborate a lot with the student group, and we do this thing that we call teachbacks, where the apprentices introduce topics and work with them, and whether that's teaching them how to use a caliper or talking to them about CSOs, or really any of the work that we do. It's a huge part of the program. So the young people as mentors to the slightly younger people. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Chris, for also helping us sort of bring all these points into convergence here. And lots of energy in that room and excitement for microplastics, which you really won't find that anywhere else. So let's start to segue into some of these formative conversations. And probably the best place for us to start off is just to know the genesis. How do these relationships with youth start? What does the recruitment process look like? And again, we want to talk about the successes, but we also want to start to look at and really challenge the challenges, so to speak. So let's talk stories, narratives. Shinara, if you want to start us off talking about your program in Red Hook, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And this is a story that is starting and evolving and definitely doesn't end here, but I basically wanted to share a little bit about a program that Billy and Oyster Project was hosting this summer in Red Hook, Brooklyn, which is basically just coming out of that little anchor area in Brooklyn, and Governor's Island is right across. And this neighborhood that we were working in, the school is a Title I school, and that's definitely a big goal for Billy and Oyster Project, to be in underserved schools and be a resource and bring in, facilitate some good connections with the harbor, where historically they may have not been able to, and even though they're right by the waterfront. So this is why we chose to work with the neighborhood school in Red Hook, and we essentially plan to have 6 weeks of after-school programs this summer. And living in this environmental education world, we know the value of being able to have, let's call it kind of like successive workshops, because it's hard to sometimes get everything crammed into an hour and you're never going to see those kids again. So this became a unique opportunity for us to be able to work with the same set of students. So basically the goal for this program was to take students outside. Every time we'd meet them about once a week, we would pick a different spot in the neighborhood for them to visit on a waterfront, whether that's a canal or if it's the ocean. And essentially we wanted to open up our horizons a little bit about what are some critters that we might find around us, what does our local ecosystem look like, and also expose them to maritime careers, which is a big thing that the Billy and Oyster Project wants to do, whether it's showing, a career exists in education by always modeling that when I'm in the field, because I feel like working as an informal educator, not in schools, you're always modeling that whenever you're with students, like, hey, we exist, this is a career path. And by just representing, I think that's a big part of the work. But through this program, the idea is to build on the idea of there are jobs, and essentially you can also go to a high school that we work with, it's a flagship school on Governor's Island, the Harbor School. And the Red Hook Neighborhood School is going to be transitioning to middle school. So it's a very exciting time for the school and a time of transition that we want to be able to get in there and be able to share whatever resources we can in building the curriculum and getting the students ready to be on the harbor. And this program, we had about 10 on average attending a week. And right off the bat, the biggest challenge I would say is attendance, and having the same kids show up 6 weeks in a row can be hard, but we made it work. And that's definitely something that we want to be able to work through some of the challenges that we found there. But with these 6 weeks, we took students out to a lot of our stations. We call them our Oyster research stations, these little structures about this big in the water with oysters in them. And we basically monitor and see how those little ecosystems are doing. And by the end of it, we were exploring these oyster research stations and looking at water quality wherever we went. They were repeating the tests over and over. And I actually met some of these students just yesterday after 3 months, and was amazed at how much they remembered from like 10 drops of the pH test, and being able to shake it like 20 times, they remembered all the numbers. And I was really impressed. These are elementary students that are going into 4th and 5th grade. So that's a big win for me personally. But coming from this program, some of those goals, and I want to start showing some pictures while I talk about this, because visually I feel like it's much easier to understand the scope of what this project was doing. We were very much outdoors. We were spending about 2 hours outdoors each day with these students. This was the kind of a whole group. We were working with YMCA as well, and they were able to facilitate some art and dance lessons in supplementing what we were doing in the field each week. So this was a really exciting opportunity for us to use what we're learning about the harbor, but explore it through different disciplines and really be able to, for the students to express themselves about what they were learning about their local neighborhood. So this was, if anybody is familiar with this area in Brooklyn, this is Gowanus Canal right behind us, and this is the Lowe's parking lot. This was one of our sites. The rocks were very memorable by the students, but we learned how to tie some knots here, and were able to put out a little cage and see what we would find. And we didn't find much. We only found a shrimp this day, but we did spot a lot of blue crabs in the Gowanus Canal, which is one of the most polluted waterways that exists in the whole of the US, but definitely New York. And at the end of the 6 weeks, we were able to go on a boat ride. A lot of students had not done this, but we were able to work with harbor school students and some of our team members in taking the students out. And I love this picture because, you know, at the end of it, some people were so into it and some were just like, this is calming, I'm just gonna take a nap. And whatever that might be, however people want to experience their time on the water, we definitely let them. And another role of mine that I see as an environmental educator, I always bring my binoculars with me. I am a birder, and on days like this, it really reminded me why I do this, because all the students wanted their turn and they were exploring the environment around them and wanted to know exactly how to use them. And while we might not have the budget to bring binoculars to everybody all the time, this is a big thing that I urge educators to do is share whatever resources you might have at that time, to be able to kind of expand the learning even more in the field. Whether it's through our passion like birding or it's our passion through art, it's really becomes a great opportunity for us to kind of merge all our skills or hobbies and build them, because the students make you. Definitely holds me accountable. And towards the end of the program, we were taking field notes each week. We were kind of drawing up what we would find. I think this was a blue crab and this was a little mummy chug fish. In the end, we actually had an opportunity for the students to share their work with the rest of the school, the elementary school that was there. And this became a really incredible opportunity because I really saw the students become mentors themselves. And this was one of the students in our program right on the left here. And he's kind of showing all these students that were interested in stopping by on our table, like, hey, look at this test, and this is how this works. And, be able to model what we were learning and share all our learnings and become kind of these stewards of information for the harbor, I thought was amazing, because I just had to sit back and watch them do their own thing and teach each other. And I think that was a big mentorship opportunity that was born through the program that was not fully seen as a goal, but really did end up being a very impactful last session of tabling, where the intention was, let's just share our work so the school knows about us and what we're doing. But it became this big learning opportunity, which I was really excited about. And really just speaking a little bit about challenges, I did mention attendance. The other one I would say, and I think this exists a lot for us, is funding for programs, after school programs, and more of these programs that can be free for students is a challenge. And this one was possible due to foundation and working with city district and making all these things work. And it takes at least one dedicated person from a group to secure all of these things. And that's definitely something that I'm sure we'll touch on more. Funds can always be a challenge, but sometimes people say it's the audience or the students that you're working with. I don't think that's a challenge for me. It's more of like, it's our preparedness and something we have to do on our end to meet whatever the needs of the students are, coming nothing about the harbor or knowing everything about the harbor, and to be able to tailor the experience for them. But the biggest one for me was definitely funding and being able to have the resources out there for all the students to enjoy. And I'm happy to chat more about this program, and we're now building it as after school programs during the school year and hoping to offer this again next summer with YMCA.
Thank you, Shinara. I really appreciate your points about personalizing these programs and having that continuity, particularly on the funding side of things. So we'll get more into this as we continue our discussions here. So next up, David, did you want to talk to us about your workshops with students?
So I'm having a connection problem. I'm gonna ask if Jasmine could go, and I can switch computers very quickly in between.
Sure, that's fine. Jasmine, if you're ready, then
Sure,
yeah,
yeah.
love to have you
If
speak. Thank you.
if you're ready, yeah. So, and if I know some of the apprentices who were just making it in from school, so kudos to you guys again for working with your schedules. I know you guys are very busy trying to handle all your school business. So I'm gonna be quiet in just a second and hand the mic over to them, but just a bit of context behind these guys. They were all my past students, and literally they are the reason why I love what I do. So I'll let you guys tell the story because I'm sure you guys can tell it way better than me.
Hello, you're back.
Hi.
Hey,
This is Mukhtar, by the way. Sorry.
I'm Mukhtar. I just came from school.
Yeah. What was it again?
A story.
About
How it played in your passion about the environment or at rocking the boat.
All right. It says develop their confidence, passion, leadership skills, care for the environment, and more.
Right.
My confidence went up when we first went kayaking, because you're in like a little boat by yourself. Those are easy to flip, so you gotta learn quick how to keep yourself centered. That built my confidence. My leadership skills happened when it was my first time becoming like the captain of the boat. Because you gotta tell which way to row and when to hold water. And for the care of the environment, as we said last time, we'll take a boat out, go to either the CSO or a concrete plant park and like collect water from microplastics to see what's in the water. Next.
All right. For me, my passion, it started when like in the student program when we would go out on water and we'd do like the basic water quality tests like pH, nitrates, and all of that. And like we learned how the water quality levels will be affected by the city and also by like Mother Nature. And like once I came to apprentice program, also like we did microplastic samples and enterococcus, which is like human poop. And like doing those, like it gave me like a better understanding of how we harm the environment, and like it did like ignited my passion more for the environment.
Yes.
For me, my confidence came from when I started work. Like, well, I first gained confidence when I was in the student program, but it furthered when I joined the apprentice program because I was able to take everything that I learned from the student program and actually put it like and remember it and use it in the apprentice program, which I found very surprising personally, because I was like, wow, I didn't know, like I didn't realize that I knew all of this and I remembered all of this. And that helped spark my passion in like trying to learn more about the environment and like on my own time researching different things about the environment, like microplastics and water quality. And yeah, it made me care more for the environment just in general because, you know, when I go outside and I see like plastic on the floor, I see garbage, I'm like, oh, I should like pick this up, you know. And when it comes to leadership skills, rather than leadership skills, I've definitely gained like building like community skills and working in a team. Because as you can see, my team, the apprentice, yeah, we're all a team. And like, I feel like rather than only one of us being a leader, we all work better together as a whole unit, you know? And we lead ourselves in exploring the environment.
Welcome, Nani. Thank you for being here.
I'm sorry I'm late.
Okay. Introduce yourself.
My name is Kalani, but I go by Nani. What are
What your passion is about the program.
my passion used to be like, well, art and music are like my passion, but over time, like being an artsy, being with Jasmine a lot, it developed my, my want for environmental science, and that's what I want to do in the future. And just like the thing, like, and like we're doing a lot of research on like environmental racism, and like that makes me want to like go into like environmental like politics, and like, just let the whole world know like we need to help the environment, something that we are slowly destroying, and eventually, hopefully not saying that, hopefully we don't do that.
Not with you leading the revolution, Nani. Thank you guys. And I know you have millions of stories of things that have happened on the water, and you guys are doing such great work, and actual work that adults are doing and analyzing all the time. But I think, yeah, the intimate time that we all have together, that you guys have together on the water, is the most interesting and most special part about it. I'm wondering if, and you don't all have to say anything, but how has mentorship played a part in all of this for you? So thinking about your PAs and things like that, and hopefully, you guys becoming my PAs in the future. How has mentorship played a part in all of this for you?
Well, okay. So being in the student program, my PAs were Ty and Isaac. Missed them. And since I joined the program when I joined the program, we went remote. But through Jasmine and through Isaac and Ty, I was able to learn everything that I needed to know. And when I came in as a student, I was able to learn things very quickly because Isaac and Ty, Jasmine all gave me the things that I was able to use. And I feel like I definitely branched out more like socially because of Ty and Isaac and Jasmine. So that's been great. Yeah, mentorship.
All right, teach backs.
Yeah.
All right, for me, for mentorship, I could say that like with RTB, it was like, for me, it's like an escape to like, like the stress at school or at home or anything like that. So coming here, like I was able to forget all of that and really like, talk to the PAs and Jasmine and even the social workers too, who like I could like, put my trust in. And like, if I ever needed to talk about something or just have I need a opinion and a decision I want to make, then I would have them to talk to. So yeah.
My mentors, as Raven, Isaac, Ty, and Jasmine, they all helped me when I needed help at certain times growing up. In the past 2 years I was here, I was like struggling in school. So then Jasmine, Isaac, or Ty will come, help me with school, and I'll go on with my day.
My mentors have definitely taught me to socialize and to bond with others, because I came to RTB in like 2019 of the summer, and I used to be really, really quiet. Like I wouldn't talk to anyone. Like I was very to myself, but through through the many PAs that I have, had over the years, like over the time of being a student, they've taught me that, to not be afraid to speak up and like to talk to people, because, bonds are nice and it's what makes the job fun, but also is what gets it done.
Thank you all. Wonderfully said.
Thank you, rocking the boat crew. We appreciate having you here. We love hearing your perspectives and hope to hear from you more as we continue on here today. David, were you able to figure out your tech riddle? Okay.
You know, teaching in the Zoom era means keeping another computer within arm's reach at all times. So it just took a second. Thank you, everybody. And a special thanks actually to the Rock the Boat folks. Lower Raritan Watershed, we put together a little team. We came up and visited you all probably 3 years ago now. And we had the chance during the pandemic to start building boats. It was because we'd seen what you guys did that we were really inspired and knew we could start something, a tiny version. In fact, tiny boats. But big enough, we're gonna get them in the water soon. And the youth that we've had attracted to that are part of the experience I've had as I've been working with both the Lower Raritan Watershed and for much of what I'll show here in the next couple of minutes, Future City in Elizabeth. And I should mention as we start, if you guys want to put up the first image, I sort of need to apologize in advance. I'm compressing and conflating something like 15 years of youth activities across at least 2, if not 3 different organizations. But our path hasn't been orderly, so it's easier to just skip those details and those differences. We definitely never found a silver bullet, but we've had some success. And for us, it's been because as a professor, it's something I have access to, technology. We've found ways to use it to keep students engaged with the environment over the years. And I can't stress enough, these lessons are learned, I'm certainly not the only person doing this work. My colleagues at Future City and these students, remarkably independent youth, who've all made what I'll show here in the next few minutes possible. So you see here in this one image, some students on a pier down on the Arthur Kill, at the edge of Elizabeth, looking across at Staten Island. But they've got something going down out of their hand and into the water. And I want to come back to that because it seems like a long time ago now, back before you even needed a license to fly a drone. In a live setting, some of the students asked me about UAVs and drones as a way to look at their waterways. And being a boring professor, I kind of pointed out they're more expensive than they thought. And Elizabeth's at the southern end of runways for one of the busiest airports in the country. No, I just wasn't so sure we needed to go very far with that conversation at the time. And I went away thinking, I've been smart and convinced them. Next time I came, what I found is they just redirected it, right? And so what you see here is them working. They had gotten their hands on underwater camera that Future City had acquired. To them, it was sort of like the drone, just on the other side of the surface of the water. And if they'd asked me about it, I'm sure I would have said something stupid about how the water was too murky and they wouldn't see that much. But they excitedly showed me these underwater videos of estuarine litter and pulled me into this project. They, like I said, I sort of, to myself, I reflected that none of us needed video to know there would be tires and cans and other debris down there. But to them, the finding of it and the showing it to other people was about doing it in a way that nobody else could do. They had this tool that nobody else had. And that led to several other projects and eventually a workshop where I got to bring some of the students up to Rutgers for 3 consecutive summers for summer workshops. And as we did those, we were teaching them with some software licenses for GIS. And I should mention as we move on today, by the way, today is GIS Day, an international holiday in the geospatial world. Happy GIS Day, everybody. And it would be a tough thing for a lot of students to get into. They quickly were replicating what we were trying to do at Rutgers in their own way there in Elizabeth. And Future City is in 2 very historic houses. So it meant that when I would go visit the students in Elizabeth, they had built a GIS lab in the former bedroom of the Royal Governor of New Jersey, Governor Jonathan Belcher. But instead of like looking around at this amazing historic setting, they were really focused on the empowerment that GIS was giving them. Right? Even if they were creating really simplistic digitized shapefiles and doing it on small screens, they thought they had something other people didn't have. And to them, that was exciting. but early on, at least, the GIS never sort of lasted. Every summer, the lab got put away, and the expertise, those students tended to go off to other things at times. And it seemed like we had this big change when we ran these summer workshops because we brought in a different tool. And the tool that we started using while still GIS, it was something called story maps. It's a web interface that lets them build their entire story. It can include maps, but it can also include photos and video, lots of text, and very professional looking. And if we advance here, we can see an example really quick. At the end of their weeks, they had collaboratively created stories. Now, this first example I have is actually from the lower Raritan and not from a student, it's from one of our volunteers. But it's a lengthy telling of the story of a stream. And again, this puts it in a different format, in a professional format without coding. In fact, this was someone who insisted to me at the start, at least, that she wasn't very computer friendly. This has been this incredible record that we have about the stream. Now, if we move to the next one, we can see one of the student examples. Professional framing, the data they've created, though, is sometimes colored in ways that look a little more studentish. I love that. It brings their energy into the maps. And what I found with these story maps, while they still had to learn some GIS, so that didn't actually go away, this made them feel like it was something they could carry on in time. Putting this thing up into this ephemeral cloud space where all the world could see it, that to them was really special and different. Actually, it's really funny. Using the very expensive desktop software, not as exciting to them. Using this more publicly accessible tool, that to them, that was where the magic was. They would go back then and over the winter break, over an alternate spring break, or when they would do other summer projects, sometimes I could help. Often they'd have to do these without me. The older students were mentoring the younger students. They were training them and bringing along. And really quick, what I saw is Future City suddenly had this perpetual motion machine where the older students were leading the younger students into this. And they were doing story maps about litter in their city, about the Elizabeth River. And I'm waiting now. I'm suspicious that this winter break, they may be doing one on the horrendous flooding they just experienced with the remnants of Hurricane Ida. But it's going to be student driven. That's what I know about it. They're not tech savvy, at least some of them aren't, and they still do it. Yeah, this is just a tool. Yeah, it's a commercial proprietary product. And yet it means putting some of their work up into these online spaces that maybe you or I are a little bit itchy about, but to the students, it's something special, it's something unique, and that they can do it without coding and with limited lessons. And it makes them feel like they've got something very professional. They're just so excited by these. And that to me has, like I said, it's a parallel to what I saw again with a few of the students that got involved with our boat build, and with students I see engaged in some of the other things. It's something special that tends to have legs. And so what I know, kind of looking back on these, is for many years now, I've seen them undertake explorations of their environment and feel not just motivated, but responsible to the other students in the special ways they do it. So I'll sort of close this part, at least with my GIS Day wish for all of you, is you have great data that makes you want to tell stories too. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. It's really fascinating to think of GIS or really any technology as like a figurative and a literal connector for people. So really appreciate getting that narrative there. So let's transition into another topic. So this is keeping us on a similar trajectory. So thinking beyond the setting of higher education, what sort of things are we doing or can we do to create opportunities for youth in terms of actual career options. So to kick off that conversation, we want to jump to Allison, who's going to talk about her experiences working with students in the field and how this maybe was formative for her in terms of creating these pathways for these people. Allison?
Thanks, Jerel. Yeah, when we think about youth getting involved, my youth is a little older than some other people's youth. I don't even call them youths. They're definitely adults to me. But they are still learning. They're college students of varying ages. They may be straight from high school. They may be returning students. But in every situation, our students are still learning about outreach and education, advocacy, becoming concerned citizens, becoming citizen scientists. And so my role as a mentor is to help them along that path. NJCU is a really, really great place to work because it is such a diverse institution. We have students from all walks of life, from all ethnic minorities, and from all levels of income. Many of our students are dreamers. They're first generation students. They've just moved to the area from wherever. And a lot of them are working full time to support themselves through school and don't have time to go, have this long internship. One of the ways that we've gotten around that is to help the students by finding paid internships. So I give them a job for the summer. These jobs can come from internal sources. We have grants through the Department of Education. We have grants through NSF that pay the students for mentorship and internships over the summer. We have external grants. This summer, I was able to connect one of my students to the Polgar Foundation, the Polgar Fellowships, which run through the Hudson River Foundation. And this was a grant that allowed my undergraduate, Luana, who's pictured on the left here, to work all summer and be able to devote an entire summer to research. Luana has goals of going to grad school. And this was kind of one piece that would really up her application status and really kind of make her more attractive to graduate programs, that she was missing that large research piece. Luana was able to take her summer off and do research instead. She actually was able to present her research to the summer interns through Hudson River Park Trust at HRPT's Estuarium. And she was able to present at an international conference of the Coastal and Estuarine Research Foundation last week, where she had another scholarship called the Rising Tide Scholarship, which gives is a program aimed at increasing diversity in the marine sciences. And so she was able to attend the conference for free, present her work, all that. Some of my other students have gotten different grants through other organizations. I've connected them with local nonprofits where they have been able to use their research for a greater good. My student Carla this summer and Juliana and Risa in the past, they've worked for nonprofits such as the Lake Kapakong Foundation. We've worked with New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, with the Bronx River Alliance, with Rocking the Boat on projects in the Bronx River, where the research that these students collect actually goes towards a higher purpose. And that gives them kind of a reason for doing it. And it makes them feel more connected. And that's really what mentorship is. It's about connecting these students to something that they're gonna take into the future. And so if I had any kind of grand wrap up of my youth, my college students, I would say that it's about connecting what they learn in the classroom to what they can take forward in real life and giving them those skills of real job experience and real research experience that they can now take on to the future, and giving them the connections with other NGOs, with government organizations, with schools, so that they have a base, a network to start picking off of when they're looking for a job. And I will be passing along all the jobs that I saw on the Whova app to them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that point. And I really also appreciate your observation on the different motivations that people may have for the work, and how do we really target those touch points to get people interested in doing this kind of practice. Thank you very much for that. So what I'm going to do now is shift us to more of a panel-based discussion and just get everyone here involved. And in particular, just piggybacking off of what Allison was talking about there, get us thinking about how the environmental field, just generally speaking, can feel like a bit of a black box, and there's a lot of ambiguity around how you get a position in these fields. So thinking about the particular populations that we're working with, I'd love to hear from our panelists in terms of how we make these opportunities, these pathways more visible for students. So I'll just toss that out there if anybody wants to just take that and run with it.
Well, I gotta say for me, one is because I'm coming from a university, it opens the conversation, talk about how we frame environmental and water issues at the university. But it is still, I find myself asking them very often how they're seeing these. And part, I'm very interested in seeing how differently they're approaching those. And so, like I said, asking them and listening to them so often opens that door more quickly.
I think just piggybacking on that, David, I think in higher institutions and undergrad as well, having more career fairs that are really targeted towards environmentally sustainably oriented organizations and bringing them to campuses instead of having students kind of look for these sources and look for these job opportunities, whether it's through social media or knowing a friend, being able to have that access to the information. But I think being able to go in and recruit and have that build up to that capacity where we can be visible in those larger spaces and recruit just like somebody would for a consulting position or a banking position. And being able to, I think, also give credit for some of this experiential learning in an institution where it's not just like, this is my extra work, but this is coming towards my degree and will count for something. I think more people are more likely to take up those opportunities and become mentors themselves in those positions by being able to get some kind of compensation for it, whether it's monetary or if it's through a credit through an institution.
I think one of the things that also needs to be brought up when we're talking about getting students involved, getting youth involved, is the fact that environmental education is not a very diverse looking field. And it is really geared towards people who have some money. Everyone on this panel can attest to the fact that you do not make a lot of money in the environmental education field. And so, there really is a privilege about being able to study environmental science, marine science, and being able to work in a place like New York City on this. And so as people in a position of, I don't want to say power because that's not the right word, but decision-making, we need to be able to offer the internships and the externships and the advice to these students that will actually allow them to really get a job in this field. And Jasmine's like a great example of this, where you were a student and you are working in this field and you're helping your students to get a job in that field. Sorry to highlight you there, but I love your career path, as you know. And so that's something that everyone on this panel and this call can really start working towards, that will make a difference in attracting youth to the field for the future.
Thank you for that shout out, Allison. I appreciate it. So it's all for them. But yeah, I guess, and just to piggyback off of what you were saying, and it's such a harsh reality, that we're living in, that this is the case. And I think coming from the student perspective, when I was a student, for me, participating in Rocking the Boat and other organizations in which this was the forefront, it was an eye-opener for me that this could actually be a career path for me. Growing up, this was not the space for people who look like me. We would typically hear, oh, that's, and just quoting, this isn't right at all, but that's white people stuff. That's not what we do. And that's coming from someone in my family. So the first time I told my grandmother what I was doing after school, she freaked out because she had no clue about it. She didn't have that access to it growing up. And so it was very foreign. So for me, it was super eye-opening to see that I am capable of doing this. There's actually so much things that you can do within this field. So So that's just my part on.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for your commentary there. Actually, that's a great lead into our next question here. But Shaquille, did you have any additional thoughts that you wanted to throw in here before we move ahead?
No, it's fine. You can proceed.
Okay, great. So yeah, with this backdrop in mind, let's talk more about how we're actually recruiting. What are we doing to attract and also, again, very importantly, retain students and some of these young professionals in ways that are also going to be conducive to them becoming community leaders. So what does this maybe like transfer of power look like when we're developing these relationships? So let's start off, Shaquille, with your experience as a fellow in the climate justice program with the city of Newark.
Sure. Share my screen. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so again, my name is Shaquille Faran, and I.
Shaquille, sorry to interrupt. Just a quick note. It's showing up as like present. It's not in presentation mode. It's I think it's like in notes mode.
You have
So
to
we can
click
see
use
it.
slideshow. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. So again, my name is Shaquille, and I am the program assistant for Newark's Office of Sustainability. And prior to that, I was a summer fellow with the Office of Sustainability, where we created the Newark Youth Climate Justice Ambassador Program. And just to give a little bit of context around that, it's a 6-week program where we had Newark youth, high schoolers, ranging from ages 15 to 18. And we basically had them for 6 weeks where they were taught different environmental content on issues affecting the city of Newark. They were given hands-on activities, and then also we had field trip experiences just for them to go out there and see what's happening out there in the environmental world as it relates and affects the city of Newark. Okay, so we partnered with Newark Green Team experts. So like I said, we had different experts come in and interacted and engaged with the youth that we have. So we had different topics such as air pollution. We had them learn about urban heat islands. They learned about environmental justice. They learned about renewable energy, among other topics. And having these speakers come in, a lot of them were from the city of Newark, so they were getting, that first experience on like interacting with the experts in the city who are actually working on these issues. Next slide. Okay, there we go. And then here we had them, the interns they had, or the ambassadors at this point, that's what they were. They had hands-on activities. So this first image here shows us on a trip by the Passaic River where we were learning about the contaminants in the river. The next picture shows a ambassador taking the surface temperature of a white wall, as we had a activity dedicated to urban heat islands where we we walked around and checked the surface temperature for different surfaces, including asphalt, concrete, trees and stuff like that. And another image here demonstrates a ambassador labeling a catch basin. So we also had the ambassadors go out and we cleaned and labeled many of the catch basins in and around the city of Newark. And the last image shows the ambassadors sitting in a bus talking to an expert on environmental justice as we rode around the city of Newark and visited different environmental justice sites. This image here shows community involvement. So basically we had a game called the game of Flood, which basically teaches or helps individuals to understand planning around climate issues and government planning as well. And the first two image at the top shows the interns interacting with members from the Arcadis team, where we were, doing our first session, just to get familiar with what the game is and how it works. And then the two images at the bottom shows the Office of Sustainability running a citywide Game of Extremes training session. And then we also had the ambassadors. At this point, they already graduated the program, so they came back as interns to help administer this training. And then, just to close out, I wanted to talk about how I transitioned from being a coordinator for the Climate Ambassador Program to the program assistant role, in which interns are now, or the ambassadors, now interns with the Office of Sustainability, or working with the Office of Sustainability in our, outreach and operations. And even though they're high schoolers, they're still here, and they're eager to do the work. Just remembering how the interns were at the beginning of the program to where they are now, have seen such tremendous growth, and just being able to lead them through that program and not retaining them in the environmental field, and staying on to work with the city, just makes me feel fulfilled, and thinking that this is how we could approach just engaging the youth with the environment. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shaquille. How many are there at a time of these ambassadors?
So just to give a little bit more background, this was the first time we did this program. So we actually created it and implemented it this past summer. We started with around 9 ambassadors, but then we had some drop off, so we went down to 6. But it made it, a little bit more intimate, and ambassadors were really able to engage and participate fully.
Great. Thank you for that context. I bring that up in part because a lot of us, considering that funding piece that Shinara brought up, are concerned about scalability. How do you create something like this and scale it out in a way where it's going to have sort of this maximum impact? So that's helpful to know. Thank you. Jasmine, can you talk to us about your transitions and the context of employment and these pathways?
Yes, for sure. So for context, I've been in a full-time position at Rocking the Boat since 2015, but I was introduced as a student in 2009. So I was able to spend time in all the programs, including the program you just saw those lovely apprentices in, as well as being a program assistant. So I also manage about 4 program assistants who are college-age students who are alumni. So they graduated through the program, and once they kind of get through their first semester or transitioning to whatever that is after they graduate high school, they're offered a position here if they so choose. So I was able to do that, and I think what has helped me very much so is just having that perspective of being in their shoes. And I think the way I use that a lot is not just kind of going back to what stuck with me, the memories that I had, so for full disclosure, the first time I went on a boat, I did water quality. Did I remember anything about that specific test that I did? Probably not, but it wasn't the specific test that drew me and kept me in. It was that experience that I had while I was out there, the getting stuck in the mud on the way out and trying to figure out how to work as a team to collectively get that boat together and, bring the data back. So I think I have utilizing that perspective. I really try to make everything student focused, both using my perspective, but also just bringing them into the conversation as much as possible. So leaving room in my curriculum development, I definitely am privileged to have some freedom in that, but leaving a little bit of room to explore those extra interests. So for instance, one of those apprentices mentioned they were really into art. And so I took it upon myself to do a little bit more of that when it came to that semester. So really trying to tailor the experience to them and making it fun and enjoyable, like what I remember. Another thing that I tend to think is this concept of teaching environmental science is kind of in, about, and for. And so it happens on a spectrum. We mentioned that there's many different reasons why people don't have access to outdoors in general, to nature. Our own park right here, Hunts Point Riverside Park, is only a bit of over a decade old, and previously was a trash dump. So that right there in itself is an access issue. So having those experiences in the environment, in nature, I think is a really good way to start getting them to care, getting them to really spark that light bulb. You know, why a lot of times, you know, people think, why would you care? Why would you not care about the environment? But sometimes it's that they just don't have that connection. They don't have the connection to the environment, or they don't have a huge park that they can easily access and not be worried about things like safety. So really kind of trying to expand the amount of fun experiences and memorable experiences that they have in nature, on the water, and then finally linking that to everything. So that's where the about and the for comes in. So that's just kind of the way that I try to tailor everything. And aside from that, one other thing I realized is there's so much work that goes into all of it. From a student perspective, just thinking back of, oh, wow, yeah, I remember this trip and it was so fun. But then on the planning side of it, you see all these, you know, small little logistical things that, oh, that's why that happened when I was a student. So that just really made me very appreciative for the mentors that I had growing up. It was a quick realization that the experience you have is really dependent on who is in that position and who your mentors are. So I definitely don't take that lightly, and I try to make that definitely my main focus.
Thank you. Thanks, Jasmine. Actually, there's a question from someone in our audience about the distinction between an apprentice and an intern that maybe you or others could speak to. Just some of the language that we're using, I think it might be helpful for us to clarify for people. So Jasmine, if we could start with you and then others, if you have thoughts on this distinction and how we're just describing the positions could probably be really helpful for our audience here. Sure,
thank you. Yes, an apprentice is something that we kind of refer to for our older students, so 11th and 12th graders. You can think of it as a bit of an internship. So the apprentices you saw earlier, they're all part of a stipend program. They did not get paid in any way, shape, or form when they were in the program with me. But as they've moved up and are working with Chris, they do get stipends for their time here. So it's very much like an internship program just after school. So that's just kind of our lingo for that at RTV.
Great, thank you. Shinara, I saw you shaking your head. Did you have thoughts on this as well? Okay, no additional points. Okay, so we're in the home stretch here, so hopefully we can start to at least attempt to bring things full circle here. But others in the audience, if you have questions or thoughts, please make sure to submit them through the platform so we can get those in the mix here. But just again, maybe looking towards what are some of the remaining obstacles to this level of engagement with the different populations that we're interested in. I'd be curious to hear from people, and Jasmine, maybe you could speak to this component because you mentioned this experience with your family and sort of like the why and what are you doing, in this field kind of thing. To what extent are families an important part of the engagement process, or maybe even a barrier or a possible facilitator to being in this world?
Would you believe me if I said it's a little bit of all of that?
Okay, I believe it.
Yeah, it's a huge component, especially, with our high school students. When I am first meeting parents, I make it an avid point to mention that we are just a part of the village that we are hoping to support them with. So it is very important to bring them into so much, not just understanding what it is that they're doing, but really focusing in on them and creating a program around them. So for instance, we have something that we do every semester called Family Night. And that's just basically when we have some great food, we bring families in and the students get to take the spotlight and teach their families what they've been doing. So yeah, the first time for me, when my grandmother heard I was on a boat, she was very fearful, but a few years later, I did get her to come out with me. So yes, definitely a huge one. Some parents can be very fearful for some of these things for all the same reasons, this access and this institutional challenge that we have. Some are gung-ho and are all about this and have even done work on their own. So we've also had some really cool volunteers come on for that too.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts on this particular topic? Anybody who's had these levels of engagement with families and have success stories or potential failures to share?
I don't engage so much with the families, but the students and I, well, the students share with me a lot of their cultural and familial like customs. And I find that we actually connect a lot through food. So when we all learn about each other's cultures, we always somehow end up on the topic of food and what kind of food you eat, how it's good. I've had students bring me in food. They tell me about local restaurants that they like. And it's just, you know, there is this whole I am your professor, you're my student relationship, which we do keep. Like it's very important that they see me as that mentor figure. But at the same time, I want to have a relationship with them where they feel comfortable talking to me. And so I find that when I ask them about, you know, what do you do at home? You know, when did you move to the United States? When did you move to New Jersey? Tell me about the kind of food that you cook with your family. It just connects us on a different level. You know, we all share different cultures, we share different backgrounds, but everybody likes to eat and everybody loves good food. And so it's just another way to connect with them. And once we're connected on that level, I find that they talk to me more about their aspirations for the future. And then I can say, oh, well, you know, what about this internship? What about this class? And we get back to that mentorship relationship.
I think just to add to some of this comes from more what I wish I had coming into this field as a younger steward. I think a lot of students and youth are interested and want to engage in this work, and it's easier to get them on board than it is their families in most situations where they might have a very different experience and may have not, especially immigrant families coming into the US, are not as comfortable taking their kids out for camping, or, you know, don't have those skills to share with their kids. So it almost puts them in a place of shame that, hey, my kid is going into this, but, you know, how can I help them? And then it's like immediate barrier right there, right? Like you are creating that at home for them. But I would, you know, encourage any educators to give tips on like, where can this position lead to? And what are the pathways that we can clearly communicate and go over? What are some roads that we want to hit and be able to for the students to then communicate them to their families? I think it'll be a really powerful tool for them to gain support and be able to feel comfortable talking about their interest at home and feel also confident in choosing that as a career pathway. So giving that kind of support for giving examples of them being mentors or the mentors they looked up to, that in itself is super helpful in being able to attract people and keep them here, and not just at the internship level, but try to get them to seek the higher fully paying positions. When you have family on your side, it's a lot easier.
Really, really important conclusion there, I think, as far as having the support, the different levels of social support to encourage you and to sustain you in the process of doing something that may be pretty foreign within the context of that circle that you have. So the last question that I have, and then we're going to wrap up here, is kind of a more of a like a meta type question. And that is thinking about everything we've discussed. I'm sort of reflecting on all the beautiful visuals that you all presented, is how you're actually promoting your work to outside audiences. So not even in the context so much of recruitment of these populations, but how do you promote your work and what you're doing? So it's fitting also in the context in which we're having this discussion on Zoom to maybe talk a little bit about how you use the internet or how you use social media to communicate your work. So I'd love to hear from anybody who's considering it, or maybe who's avoided social media or the internet for one reason or another, if people have thoughts on that. So is anyone actively on social media promoting the things that they're doing? Shinara, could you talk a little bit about some of that work?
Yeah.
And then Allison. Yeah.
I've always found that people connect first with animals and then the work we do. It's so much easier to get them on board. Like, oh my God, look, that's a cute harbor seal. Did you know they come to New York? Or look, we found a seahorse and this is why they're coming back to the harbor. And these are some of the reasons why we should protect them. I've always found that being able to talk about a certain element within the environment or a certain element to do with water, it's easier to be able to have that foundational conversation and have that bridge already kind of crossed on like our shared experiences, and then build from there on, okay, I'm going to share some more information about, you know, how you can contribute to this work or how you can get involved. But I always think that being able to have, giving the opportunity for your audience to share their stories with a touch point and in your work has been the most powerful for me, especially being the outreach coordinator, doing a little bit of the social media and the email recruitment and all of that. I've always still found communication through stories the moneymaker for getting people in.
Ultimately is what's winning out there. Thank you. I appreciate that point there. So Allison, actually, so we're getting ready to wrap up here. I want to be respectful of the panelists' time and your time here, the audience. But Allison, we can actually start with you if you have any closing thoughts. We'll just go one by one to people and just, you know, how they would sort of sum up their thoughts on these different critical themes that we've been talking about today. If you just want to take like 30 to 45 seconds, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to say. I think a lot of it's been said already. You guys heard a lot of different approaches to mentorship tonight, to involving our youth, but it all boils down to creating the next generation of advocacy and activism, environmentalists, scientists, and concerned citizens. And so, you know, I work a lot with HEP's Citizen Advisory Committee, and hopefully in 10 years, I'm going to see all these students working for those organizations. And that would be the real game changer when we get some, you know, fresh blood in, some new ideas in, where we can take all of the work that we've all done in the New York area for the past 10, 20 years and just take it to the next level.
Thank you. Jasmine, closing thoughts.
All right, yeah, I think what comes to mind is a question I got in a college class one time, and it was, what is the most powerful thing you can do in the environmental field? And I remember being very puzzled with that because I couldn't figure it out at the moment. But at the end of that semester, I was pretty grounded in the fact that I think the most important thing I can do is to start the ripple effect, if you will. So that's kind of why I went into education, and specifically the student program, and being that introduction, kind of the hook that brings them in and hopefully gets them to stay. So that's my closing. The more knowledge you can share, the more passion that we can spread, I think the better our world will be in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Jasmine. Shinara.
Very similar to Jasmine, closing remarks. I think the only thing I would add to that is that our energy carries over. And if you look really excited about your work and that passion is there, I think that draws people in and gets them interested and wants to make them, wants them, oh my goodness, kind of forms a community from there. But energy is key for sure. Keep the passion going as much as possible, and don't get into this is a job, but try to keep it going further than that.
Energy and passion could be pretty contagious. David, closing thoughts.
Yeah, energy, energy, passion, and I would throw in, ownership and making sure it's really their stuff. So you asked, how do we share our work? How I share my work is really different than how we share their work. It's their work. We turn to them and ask, how do you want this out there? And when we're lost on these projects, like, what else do I need to throw at them? They've got the energy, they've got the passion. Let them tell me. It's their work, and that's so often that's what's gotten us to places that has helped them sort of burrow in for what I hope is a lifetime of connection with these issues.
Thanks so much for bringing that full circle, David. This idea of transferring power back into the people who need it and are really going to be leading these efforts. Shaquille, closing thoughts.
I love the idea of energy, and I was just thinking about how we saw some of the students that Jasmine brought in and how how pepped up they were, and excited about the work that they're doing. So you could see that the energy is there. and just to like give them that responsibility to let them, trickle that energy into what needs to get done, because they're eager and they're there and they want to do the work. So yeah.
Thanks, Shaquille. You're absolutely right. That raw material is there. So we've wrapped up, everybody. We're at 5:29. Thank you, panelists, for the great dialogue today and the great narratives that were shared. We really appreciate it. And thanks, Liz and Rosanna, for getting us set up here today. So just a quick note before we log off. Tomorrow morning, there's a session at 10:30, the flow of trash, how we are reducing floatable debris from the waterway, that people should check out if you have the opportunity to, but all this content will also be posted. And then just a reminder, again, we want to stay engaged with you. We hope that you engage one another. And you can do that by joining one of our community tabs, which is on the platform called Creating Community with Every Catch. And there's a spot, again, just to continue some of the dialogue that we had here today. Thank you all very much again for your time. I really appreciate it. You take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, everybody.